You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Jonesy in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 462, our breakdown of Rix Road, the season finale of season 1 of the Andor series. And wow, it was a very emotional episode on a lot of different levels. I think it did a great job of recapping and concluding arguably some of the best storytelling we've had in Star Wars ever, if I do say so myself, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But a lot of great moments, and like we had predicted and talked about in the last couple of shows, is everyone came back to Ferrix, which was fitting since this is where it kind of all started. And left us with a pretty good ending that I felt like was not, ambiguous in terms of what's going to happen. I think we have some clear direction in a lot of things, but there are some questions that have gone unanswered, and we may touch on those in a little bit. But and I say I'm talking about myself and Jonesy, who's with us tonight. Jonesy, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing all right. Apologize, my voice is a little bit rough. Trying to get over a cold here, so but. Yeah, doing pretty well, man. This is what an awesome way to end a series. I mean, to feel like every episode led up to this moment and then still didn't let you down and delivered just in a whole nother level is just absolutely amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I really did enjoy this episode. I don't know that I wouldn't say it's my favorite one of the series, but I mean, it did everything I wanted it to do. And I was pretty happy with a lot of the outcomes. Even some of the outcomes that I was kind of like, I wasn't really hoping that would happen, but and now that it has, I'm really not, hung up on it by any means. So, yeah,
Actually, I think one of my least favorite moments of this episode is probably one of your favorite parts of this episode is going to be my guess, but we'll see if we get there later on.
Yeah, we can. Is it the closet scene?
It might be. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, let's before we get into the breakdown, because we're going to skip any kind of news that we've already talked about the Bob Iger thing, Bob Iger coming back on the last episode, if you didn't catch that. And, but before we do get into the breakdown, we've got some thank yous for all of our Patreon members and anybody that's joining us tonight on the live feed as we do this live recording.
Yeah. And one plug, of course, on the website, cantinacast.com/Jeditorials, we have Dante's Force Visions in You, which is a great article. So go out there and give that a view, hit the like button, leave them a comment, let them know how much you enjoy that. Really good article out there. Once again, over at cantinacast.com/Jeditorials. On the Patreon front, we had a new level up today, which was really exciting. Isabella is now part of the tribe, which is really exciting. Yeah. So thank you, Issa, for continuing support and increasing it. That means a lot to us. And of course, thank you to all of our existing members, in particular, Mike, Rob, Lauren, Dante, Risk, Justin, Jackson, Sharkman, Dan, Daz, and now, of course, Issa. And then our Delusions of Grandeur tier members, Rod, Eugene, and Kathy. Kathy, thank you all so much. We really do appreciate all of your continued support. It means a lot to us. And we are all very thankful for all of you as we approach U.S. Thanksgiving here in about a day.
Yeah.
Really just a few hours. We are,
that?
yeah. Yeah, I said within just a few hours, actually.
Yep. Yeah, we're there.
You're probably on like a bender of watching soccer, so... You probably don't know. You probably don't know what day it is.
I'm waking up the games are starting at 4 a.m. So, and this thing's over. That's usually over at 3.
That's usually when you're going to bed.
Most of the time, yeah.
This is really go to bed. This is really messing with you, isn't it?
So yeah, I just don't sleep. I'm up all hours of the day and night now with Star Wars and soccer but yeah, this is hog heaven for me. Like I live for it every 4 years. I can't explain how. Star Wars gives me a lot of thrill and a lot of pleasure, but it's soccer and specifically the World Cup is right up there. But enough of that. Let's talk about Star Wars. Okay, so I kind of threw out some thoughts. I guess my initial thoughts. I know you have as well. But what else did you have? I guess just watching the series, watching how it began, how it ended. We can talk about the post-credit scene because we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. But just general thoughts overall on this particular episode. And maybe if you want to wax a little bit about the series, that's fine too. But I do want to table a lot of our future, retrospective look at the series and, looking into the future about what season 2 is going to hold for a lot of these characters for the next Patreon episode, but give us a preview here.
Well, and I imagine we'll come back and do a season recap as well, like we usually do as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this episode really delivered on everything we needed to. It was really cool how they integrated and brought back so many different elements from across the episodes. Like Nemec's presence in this one was so perfectly applied, and what in hearing his voice and delivering his own speech, if you will, was just really powerful and perfect in the moment. And it really played where it was really cool, like delivering on the things I think you had wanted to see, right? What was it that Andor was going to glean from this stuff? And the message was absolutely perfectly applied here. And it was just so wonderful. I mean, and again, another masterfully written speech. I mean, there's an article out there by Vulture, and it's behind a paywall. But I think if you go read this one article, it's an interview with Tony Gilroy, and the idea that really one of the ideas that they had coming into the series was that Marva was going to deliver her own eulogy, and which is just so absolutely. I mean, it seems so simple, yet it's not an idea that always comes to the forefront very often, and it could
Mhm.
just be such a powerful thing, right? And hearing her own story develop and telling it to everyone in front of her and saying, I've been sleeping, and admitting that her own complacency with things has led them to where they are. But you can just feel everything building around her as she gives this really emotional speech. And I mean, you couldn't help but get teary eyed every 5 minutes in this episode. It felt like there were probably at least 3 or 4 times you're like, okay, well, just going to brush that aside now. We're just going to keep moving on. Got to toughen up a little
Yeah.
bit. No, but it was just, I mean, it's just a great episode all around. And I got to be honest, some of my favorite moments in this episode, actually, two of my favorite moments may have been Luthen. One where he said absolutely nothing while this speech is going on, and you just see him listening to what Marva is saying.
Yep.
And you could just see it sinking in on a whole new level for him. Like someone else gets it, and for him, it's almost like this reaffirmation too of what his life has been. And so it was really cool just being able to theorize what were all the thoughts going on in Luthen's head when he's hearing this speech. And then of course when Andor says, wasn't she great? I couldn't not use that for a little teaser on the title card today because it was just absolutely perfect, heartwarming, and heartbreaking all at the same time.
Yeah. That's funny. I don't. I, did I didn't. I didn't put the show notes in here until much later, like literally like 20 minutes ago. And I've got a question in here where I want to get your thoughts on what Luthen was thinking because I walked away with the same impression. Like, I mean, I'm not going to say it was transformational for him, but given the speech that he made, given the tactics that he's gone through, the amount of work that he's done to start something, and yet you have somebody who's no longer living and delivering a very powerful message. And of course, yeah, okay, the pipe bomb really started it, but this was a different approach, a different tactic in terms of how do you get people, how do you get the support of the everyday person, right? Not the Cassian Andors or the Espin, like the Saw Gerreras and the Mon Mothmas, but just the everyday general people, the populace. And for him to hear something like that, right? A very powerful speech by someone who, I don't, she's probably older than him, but it's just it was a different approach. And I don't know that I think it was eye opening, like you said, for him. I think it changed a couple of things for him in some probably good ways, but more on that here a little bit. I've got, there were a lot of things that stood out for me in this particular episode. I want to talk about the music because the marching band thing, I had, that was pretty powerful in a way that I was not expecting. The use of music in this series has been absolutely phenomenal. And we've talked about it. I think we talked about it in every episode. But this was yet another dimension to the music in Andor. And it was something that sounded familiar, but, I think they did enough to kind of keep it in the Star Wars land, Star Wars realm. At the same time, it was used so surgically to build the tension along with the editing and all that stuff. And I want to reference the Vulture article that you actually sent me that link, and I did read it. Phenomenal article. It's so
It really
good.
was good. Such a good interview.
It's
Yeah.
just so awesome to hear and read what Tony Gilroy's thinking and talking about. And by the way, one of the key takeaways from that, he talked about the Marva speech. What I found most interesting about that whole thing was that it started with that. Like that was a very early kind of concept. He started there, and you think about it, that's the last thing we saw in the series. and he kind of worked his way up, worked his way back, I guess, from there as far as where
Right.
he wanted to go. But in that article, talking about the use of, they knew that they wanted to have this kind of finale, scene, and the use of the music, working very closely with all of the set designers, and the editing group, and the technical group, and I mean, it's just so wonderfully, masterly put together that it just builds that tension, and it was something that, like, I could feel my breathing intensifying. You know what I mean? Like, I could just feel that tension. I could feel the pressure. It was a powder keg of sorts, and it was about to blow. We knew it was going to, but I mean, I was not expecting to be, I guess, emotionally moved in that way, even though I anticipated, even though I knew it was going to happen because we saw the dang scene in the trailers, like, prior to this season even starting. So,
I think it was in a bit of a like a teaser, like behind the scenes thing too, where we knew they were going to have a live performance, like the band or this
oh
orchestra,
yeah,
the
I remember that.
ensemble
Yep.
was on site. We had no idea it was for this. We thought it was like off camera and oh,
Yeah.
you play the music and it was all exciting. It was like, no, is this actually they were actually marching and playing the music. You were that immersed into it, which was just phenomenal. I just it's such a great idea.
Yeah, that's funny. I forgot we had speculated that they were using the music to motivate the actors, which, is what they did, and at the end of the day. But yeah, different approach there. Okay, so the tension was great. That music that they were playing, by the way, and I've only had a chance to watch this 2 times, but the music, is that the main Cassian Andor theme?
It sure seemed like it had
Just
elements of
slowed
it, didn't it?
down a lot.
It seemed like it, yeah.
Okay, I have to go back and listen to it a couple more times and maybe speed it up to see if it is. But that's pretty brilliant too, because that's the sound. That song, is synonymous, at least if I'm right, is synonymous with the show. And once they started playing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the dang song, just slowly, and it's been there
Well,
in front of our eyes the entire time.
and it would be really interesting to see what that actually means because it's a tune of mourning basically, right?
Yeah, eerie morning. Yep.
Yeah, and so that's kind of Andor's life at the end of the day, I guess.
There was, I mean, there were three primary, like you said earlier. I guess another opening thought is just the writing. I mean, I don't know what else there is to say, or how many
I
different
mean,
ways you can describe it.
I wrote it in the description for the show. I mean, it's another award-winning, award-worthy,
Hmm.
performances and writing.
Yeah.
I mean, and a lot of other things too. I just only have so many characters I can put in these things, but
Right.
I mean, it's award worthy in so many categories that if this show does not get the attention and the love that it deserves, then I mean, I don't know what else. I don't know what else you do.
Oh, we
And,
riot.
and I
We
mean,
pull a Rix Road.
well, I mean, kind of. I mean, then you basically go, okay, now it's just because it's Star Wars. We know that Star Wars is not blacklisted from awards. Star Wars gets awards all the time, or at least it gets nominated, but usually more on the technical front,
Yeah.
right? But I think this is the time where you say no. You could take a franchise, a blockbuster franchise, and you can put pen to paper and have these be class like just class leading characteristics of a piece of work and it be a piece of art. And that's exactly what we've had with Andor. It's just nothing short of like art with what we've got on the writing in
Yeah.
particular.
Well, and I particularly want to call out three speeches. You mentioned Marva's, and I think that was the big one, obviously, in this episode. I did appreciate Nimix as well. I thought that was some great dialogue and voiceover. And going back to that Vulture novel or Vulture article, they did talk about when they heard the actor read, they thought this is it. Like, he's the one they needed, because we were going to get. They were thinking about this particular scene and that
Yeah.
voiceover and what that was going to sound like.
You needed that
Um,
youthful like enthusiasm and
Optimistic.
naivete. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. It's just a great blend of it. And you're right, Alex. I forgot his last name, Alex something. But yeah, just fantastic reading on this.
And then the other speech I thought, while short, still powerful, was Clem's speech. That whole parallel of the rust, and and all that, and
That was
it,
unexpected. Yeah.
it was, yeah, exactly. I mean, I'm glad we did get some kind of a flashback scene, because I was starting to wonder, like, okay, so whatever happened with that storyline, and part of that, I mean, I've got questions about his sister, and where that's going to go, if that goes anywhere at this point, because it never was really resolved, and maybe it doesn't need to be. But Clem's particular speech, I know I've heard a couple different interpretations. I think the one for me out of the gate was, I was looking at that as him talking about Andor, that he was, this rust looking thing that was found and cleaned off, and there's value in it. And that coupled with Marva's speech about, him being a force of good. I mean, that was a huge motivation to know that both his father and his mother saw him in that light. And even though he probably never looked at himself that way, and he needed a good, he needed to transform from the burden of the neighborhood or the city to somebody that was, taking care of himself and much more taking care of other people, which is what we saw there at the very end. So that was great to see. And then I thought the last thing that really kind of moved me was that last line of "Kill me or take me in." I was like, I got chills when he said that, because that was a moment, right? And we've been talking about, like, when is the moment that he transforms into the Cassian Andor, the person that's willing to give up his life or take the lives of others? I hate to say it, but it's true. Take the
Mhm.
other life of others, right, for the greater good or for the greater cause, but still have that moral compass about them that we know is still there. Up until this point, he's been a very he's not wanted to be a part of this. He's been a reluctant hero. He's been thinking about himself, but this was that moment, knowing that we're going to get that time jump into season two about a year, I think is what they're talking about.
Right.
Um, that going in now a year later, I think we're just going to start off and see this Cassian Andor that we all know from Rogue One, and I'm okay with that. I'm actually pretty excited about that because I felt like they did enough in this series to kind of build up to that point and give us this final moment here where he says, "Take me in, I'm yours, use me, as you need," kind of thing.
Yeah, I really like it that's Cassian's kind of blood oath moment, or taking the oath, and I believe that's what Tony Gilroy called it in the Vulture article.
Yeah, yeah,
Is that we've heard of the you've taken a vow a couple of
hmm
different times. Well, this is basically that vow. This is the you know becoming blood brothers type of thing, right? And just committing yourself to the cause of saying it's not worth life isn't worth living if I can't be part of this to overthrow this tyranny, because it you can't escape it. And Cassian's finally understood that, and you see Luthen's reaction, and I'm really excited to talk about that with you and get your thoughts about. That was a really huge, genuine smile from him, which is very uncharacteristic of Luthen in the first place.
oh yeah,
But yeah, but such a cool moment, though. I agree with you that finally seeing what does the vow looks like something different for every character, I would presume. And so for this moment, it was a very telling, a very, I mean, it's a very black and white moment too of what that choice is. So that was pretty, that's pretty cool.
yeah. Oh, and he's also got not to we can. I had some of this for later, but just now that we're talking about it, I guess for him making that choice is it's easier for him to make this choice now than it was at any other time during the series, because now he has everybody that he loves, everybody that he cares about has either passed, rest in peace, Marva, but he's got B2, Brasso, Bix. We've got Wilmon, who I don't know what kind of relationship they have. I have some thoughts about what that's going to look like in season two, because I have a feeling he's going to be around, right? But he's got everybody that he loves and cares about now safe and secure. Yes, he still cares about Ferrex, but at this point, he's kind of buckled everything up, right? He's taken care of everything he needs. He's paid off his debts. He's a different person, and now he's actually ready to commit. And I'm not saying that was holding him back at any means, but this makes it a lot easier for him to know that he can commit now to this cause full time, 100%, with the safety and security of the people that he loves and cares about the most. At least for now, being away from all of that, and we can throw Brezzy, or was it Bezzy? What was her name?
Jesse.
Jezzy. Thank you. We can throw Jezzy in there too, although I don't
So
think they
let
have.
me ask you, but let me
Yeah,
ask you this though. So, I mean, we got confirmation that Pac is dead. And then
yeah,
Zan also gets
he
shot
bit it. Yeah.
and is dead. That's really it though. Did it surprise you, or does it bother you? Maybe bother you is not quite the right word, but maybe you get where I'm going. That so many people survived. Like there wasn't usually there's some amount of loss, and we talked about this, preparing for this episode in the Patreon show in particular. That there's got to be some sort of loss that feels like it's still real, because I mean it's a bit cliche. I get that, but when you have a big fight like this, that Brazo made it out was a little bit surprising, because there were shots all around him and he was just kind of out in the open, and he's the big man, right? And he was a target
hmm
already. So that even, Pac's son, survived was a little bit surprising.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, did any of that take you off guard that so many survived, and did it have any kind of negative response in you, or Was that no? This is a good thing because this is again building like fledgling rebellion, rebel
Yeah.
cell in this area, or how did you interpret all of that?
Well, I think it goes back to the conversations we've had about what does it mean? Why do characters die in Star Wars? And I think there are so many examples that we can point to where characters have died in Star Wars for very obscure, questionable reasons. Like we want their deaths to be meaningful. We want them to be impactful. We want them to be inspirational in some ways. I mean, we're talking about the heroes here, right?
Yeah,
And for Andor, I felt like some of that had to happen. Now, I guess the way, and if I'm just being completely honest right now, less than 24 hours before the episode premiered or has already aired, there's a part of me that's a little disappointed. Although the disappointment only comes from what did I want from the series? I wanted Andor to turn into that character and turn into the pivotal character that we see in Rogue One. And if I'm being honest, and I look at this episode, I feel like that happened, even though he didn't have this catastrophic death in the family, whether it's Bix or B2 or, and I'll even extend it further beyond Cassian. We didn't have really any other characters die. I mean,
Core.
everybody
Yeah.
lived, you know?
Oh, well, Core.
Well, screw that guy. But there's a reason for
Well,
Corv dying, right? To fill, that Cyril gets to fill that role now. So you
yeah,
got, but beyond him, I mean, we talked about Cinta and Vel possibly passing. None of that happened. Luthen survived. And so in a lot of ways, so selfishly, this is all good stuff for me because as a fan, I kind of want to see where all these characters are. When Gilroy, we were talking about that, we were talking about one of the articles recently when we were doing the news stuff on Patreon, and we said that they were carrying over 30 characters. And I thought, holy bananas, that's a lot of people. And I started doing the math now that the series is over. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's pretty close to about 30 named characters that we're all well aware of that have, made it beyond that. So anyways, to go back to your question, I think for me, I think they did enough in this episode to prove that this is the Andor we see in Rogue One. And I'm okay with that. I do feel like there were a lot of people that lived that, probably for the convenience of being able to tell a second story, but I'm not disappointed so much in that because I think that's like Luthen. Like we talked about in the last episode, I'm going to get to know, maybe not, but I think I'm going to get to know a little bit more about Luthen. I may not know the whole story, but if he had died, then I would really question what the heck was his point because he didn't really inspire Andor. Not to mention, we now know that Clea was acting on behalf of Luthen when she said, go kill this dude. So he was out to kill him. So then, like, what was the point of Luthen if he just passed? What was really the point? Because he didn't do a whole lot, honestly, to get Cassian into the fight. I think he's going to have that opportunity, obviously, going into season 2. But I would have really been scratching my head on that one if that had come to pass.
yeah. Well, I guess who was the guy that tried to turn code on them? Not is it Nurshi?
Lonnie, oh, Nurchi,
Nurchi, yeah. I'm glad he bit it. He got what he deserved.
he did. He got a big
Well,
blast of the face.
he did. He kind of knew that he did the wrong thing to listening to Marva. She reached him too at the end.
Yeah, that's the living force of the Force working in mysterious ways, as they like to say.
Right.
All right, well let's get into the dirty details here of the episode, and we'll start on Aldani. And some of this stuff I'm just going to skip over because they were so quick scenes, and we understand what they were doing. They were really kind of
Oh,
throwing
no.
a lot of stuff just to kind of build on that tension.
We started on Aldani?
Aldani, Ferrix is where we started.
Yeah, I was like, man, we've gone back in time here.
On Ferrix. And we've got Wilmon creating his little pipe bomb. There was no question about whether or not, what that was. We all could tell exactly the minute it happened. I do have a question, though, because this will play into what I mentioned earlier about his role now in season 2, given that he's off planet and in the inner circle of Cassie and Andor. I don't know. I mean, I guess Pac and him, I guess they did establish it. They all had a pretty good relationship, right? Bix, Pac, Andor.
Yeah.
So I don't question that. That all makes sense. And now Andor's he's got to be looking at this also although, no, Andor didn't bring him in. Brasso brought him, right? So, but I mean, in season 2, you've got a child whose parents have passed, who's probably wants nothing more than to continue this fight against the Empire, rise up against them, and very jaded in a lot of ways, right? It's a very different approach to Andor. I mean, there's a lot of parallels in terms of what's going on here, kind of foundationally, but I do wonder how much Andor is going to kind of take him under his wing, if at all, right? I'm not saying he's going to be, this is yet another Star Wars father and son kind of, series where we get to see them interacting and learning and growing from each other. I'm not saying all that, but I think there is an opportunity there for Andor to be able to kind of, you know, share some wisdom or share some of his own personal feelings and thoughts around what it's like to have the loss and what that means for the Empire, and help steer this kid in the right direction, because I have a feeling he's not going to go down a good path. He's going down the Cinta path, the Saw Gerrera path, right? You could see that he's at a very crucial, moment in his life, and I just wonder how much Andor is going to help get him on the right path, if at all.
Yeah, you're right. He's already started taking matters into his own hands in that more extreme fashion of doing whatever it takes to try to strike some sort of damage to him, regardless of the consequences and the cost downstream of all of that. There's we'll have to see, because I mean we know that Andor, there's going to be a break before he comes back and reunites with this group, and we just don't know quite how long that's going to be. Is it going to be during the year that is all off screen, or is it going to be after we come back to them at later on after that too? And so I think I think it would be great though. I think if anything, I think Brasso would be a great kind of father figure for him as well
Hmm. Yeah.
in some ways. And I think with them having that connection, especially if Andor's not there all the time, Andor can kind of be that like cool that comes and kind of comes and goes, but also shares what that path looked like for him and why that was so difficult for him. But they're on very different trajectories, though. I mean, where he has started versus where Andor started and where he's gone, I don't know that they're really all that paralleled with one another. So it's it might be interesting to see how they would come together in the first place. And so I think a character like Brasso, who has lived it, right? He's seen it all happening in front of him. He was there on Ferrix when all of this was happening. If anything, there might be some animosity towards Andor. Like, you weren't here the entire time. You brought this upon us. I don't know if they'll get into any of that type of dialogue, but
Hmm.
you could see where some might blame, and somewhat rightfully so, I guess, kind of, blame Andor for all of the attention that Ferrix has gotten. But of course, you can always rebut that pretty easily with what Marva was saying. It's always been here. We've just turned this blind eye. We've felt it. We took their money. We ignored them, thinking they would go away. They went away, and just you go through that speech, and it's all there. All the evidence is there.
Yeah.
This was an inevitability at some point. So, but it would be great if they came together and he had someone to mirror, what you can become. But I think I would also like to see him attached to someone like Brass, who is very well grounded too, but still has that emotional connection and saying, right, here's right and wrong. I'm willing to act and do something about it, and go that route as well. Cause
Yeah.
that's really the character I'm really interested in seeing what happens with is Brasso.
This Brasso.
Yeah. Cause he's always been so even keel. He's just like he's like that sturdiest trunk in the center square, right?
Yeah.
He's just
He's the
this
proverbial
tree.
rock of the group.
He
Right?
is, yeah. He's just always there, right? And everyone kind of depends on him, and he's the big man, right? This just kind of goes with the territory sometimes. And so, what is it about this guy that what does he bring to it, this team element, or to even a fledgling rebellion? What does
Mhm.
that look like? So, but so I think that could be a really good relationship too, and not limit him just to one. I think the idea of father figures in Star Wars is really powerful, of course, but that you only have one, or you only have one influence, of course, is not reality either. And so it would be great to be able to see people molded by multiple perspectives and points of views as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Master and Padawan, notwithstanding, but there's problems inherently in
Well, yeah, does that work out all the time?
that. No. No, that's was making a joke, because that doesn't always work. I mean, it has worked. It has worked well in some cases, but we can point examples where that really wasn't the best situation or relationship. So, okay, so on top of that, we've got Deidre arriving. She's got the Death Troopers. We got to finally see that scene, them coming in, that personal escort. I just wonder if that's like, is that an ISB thing in general, or was this because she was going into a hotbed and Pendergrass was like, no, take the best or whatever. I don't know that matters, but it was interesting that she had Death Troopers. I was really hoping they'd do more, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah,
They're just,
that they only bring a couple at a time is kind of interesting. So it
yeah, like
wasn't
send all of them. You know
right.
what I mean? Like, how many you got? 50?
I mean, and
Bring them all
then
down there.
they didn't really do their job very well either. So
No, no. I mean, they died, so maybe by death, maybe that's what they mean. But okay. So
I like
they
the
land there.
worst diving shot in history. I mean, it was so clunky. It's like if you're a baseball fan and someone's trying to steal second, or turn a single into a double, and they take this awkward slide
Yeah.
that just stops way short. It just wasn't elegant at all. That was Andor's jump. Now,
That
it was
was
super
Andor's
effective.
slide.
It was super effective. Not going to
Sure.
argue about that.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it was like the word kind of like
It was,
falling over.
I posted this video of someone redid like the Andor as though it were like a 60s television show or
Oh,
70s television show.
that was so awesome.
It was so good. But when he did that was very similar. That to me, that felt like it was out of the 70s or 80s, buddy cop dramas where he dives. And I mean, it was very pulpy, I guess, in that regard, but
Right.
I didn't
Yeah.
mind it. Okay. We also get, Corv and her kind of walking around, getting a lay of the land. Cinta's following them, which I thought, oh my gosh, Cinta's onto this. Cause I didn't pick that up in the last episode. I mean, they had that little conversation, but we now know at least at this point that Cinta's onto him, knows exactly who he is. And she's a very interesting character. She's just got like this bloodlust. Like it was kind of crazy and sick in terms of what she was doing. Like she wasn't in for anything else other than she wanted to kill Corv or an Imperial. And she had, had her sights on him. But it was a little dark for her. But
I don't know if it was dark for her at all. I think it's just her.
Yeah, that's true. Dark for a character, yeah, right, but maybe not dark for her.
But I guess what's interesting though is that for a character that we know absolutely nothing about.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we know so little about her and about. I mean, we know the Empire, killed her family, but what else? I mean, there's just so much there, and like you said, just that bloodlust. Is that all it is? Is like I just want to every single one that crosses my path, I want to shove a knife, as far in their gut as humanly possible.
That's how honestly that's how I'm walking away from this episode with her. Like I didn't
mean,
really think that much of it. Yeah, I mean, I think you're 100% right. I think that's really all it is. She's in it for the kill count, and she's keeping pace with Andor. I mean, Andor's killed his fair share in the series. He had another good one today, right? Point blank in the chest to somebody. But all of his have been, with self defense or in the midst. She basically was stalking him. She lured him into the shadowy place, stabbed him with a knife, and it wasn't just that. It was like the Jack the Ripper up the gut kind of thing. And I mean, not to sound too gruesome here, but it was pretty violent in terms of the way she killed him.
Yeah, and he was outing her, right, too, at the same time. So he knew, he recognized something was amiss. She's just in too many places all at the same time. And why is she there in that moment? What is she doing?
Yeah.
So her cover was, I guess, effectively blown, at least from, being completely covert. But at that point, she didn't care. Game over for him.
Right. We did get a shot of Bix, who remained in this kind of horrible state. Andor does say at the very end she's coming around, so it does look like her, prognosis is going to be she'll probably pull out of this 100%. But and I don't know, did you get a sense that whether or not this was just still the after effects of that one session, or do you think they've been giving her multiple sessions of this thing and it's been kind of keeping her in this perpetual state of, I don't know, disarray or displacement?
I think she's had more than one. And the reason why I think that, I kind of suspected this before, but I think we get confirmation of it now, is when he actually comes to her in the cell,
Mm-hmm.
and he says, "Come on, we got to get out of here." And she goes, No, don't do it. You'll make them angry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what, and it was that comment there that if she disappointed them or didn't give them the answer they wanted, they just didn't believe her, then they were going to punish her.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling it happened more than once, but for maybe whatever reason, hopefully it happened once too. I'm not wishing on her character, of course, but thankfully she didn't end up like a complete vegetable like Pac did. Although I imagine Pac, they may have had to go just put him down. I don't know if they actually killed. I don't know if this process actually kills you. It probably makes you go crazy, but they may have actually put him down and out of his own, or unless you end up doing it yourself. I don't know how that actually works, but
yeah. Music Trains of Green says I think multiple sessions as well. So that's pretty evil if that was the case, because I don't know what they were trying to extract from her other than just kind of keep her tortured,
Well, I mean,
it
was Krieger and Axis, right? I mean, that was another one about whether or not, and if she hesitated, they were like, "Oh, you're not telling us the truth. We're going to go get Dr. Gorst now." And
get the headphones back on her.
You did this to yourself, saying, typical torture tactics.
Mm-hmm. There's also in this kind of opening establishing shot section or sequence, we've got Zan and Brasso talking about Andor. Of course, Nurchi hears this, and he takes Zan out for a couple drinks, get him drunk to get some more information about where they're holding Andor. Because, of course, he's in it for the credits. Although he got paid back, right? Didn't Andor pay him back?
Uh,
Maybe not.
I don't remember.
Okay. I thought, well, he came back and dropped
He
some money
paid
with
some
bits
off.
and said, hey, all my debts are paid with this money kind of thing. So I don't know if he was included in that or not. Maybe he didn't
Yeah.
know, or
I think
maybe
Nurchi's
she
just
pocketed it, didn't give it to him.
he's just a jerk face.
He's a jerk. So
Well, and
his
poor
face is
Zan.
blown
I
off.
mean, Zan's like one of these lovable doofuses too that just can't help himself when he knows something. He really can't keep it to himself.
Yeah.
You just feel bad guy.
Yeah, if you ever want information from me, just buy me a few drinks and I'll tell you everything.
Ha! You don't drink.
Yep, that's true. Okay, so we flip over to Coruscant now, and I've got this. I really enjoyed this scene because I got all kinds of questions here. But we've got
This was such
Mothma
an
who.
awkward. Was this an awkward scene for you? Like it was completely out of the blue and just unexpected, though.
So it was, yeah, and I posted that too. I posted in Discord immediately after the show that this was. It felt very convenient, but I think I interpreted the scene wrong initially.
Okay.
The way I'm walking away from it now after the second viewing is okay. She's now. Well, let me ask you. I'll ask you a question. We talked about whether or not she would have an out. Like, does she have some plan to get the debts paid off so that she doesn't have to give her daughter over? Although I would agree, she looked pretty happy. Lita looks pretty happy with this whole arrangement thing. So reluctantly, I think she still went through with that. Whether or not it happens, I mean, maybe I don't know. I don't know how the tradition works. It's like, okay, you pair these two up and that's just it, or do they have is there a courting that happens, right? Some kind of a courtship period of time, and they decide at that point. I don't know, but Lita seems to be all in. But I still
Yeah.
wonder if what I guess the way I'm walking away from the scene now is okay. She's trying to start laying. She's using parent now at this point. She hates this dude. He's nothing but trouble for her. Doesn't love him, and he's backstabbing her at every probably given point. She probably thinks he's probably in on all this as well, and so she's gonna bury this guy and use some of his past sins of gambling as a way to subterfuge to cover up the fact that she's moving money, and it's a very legit story. Like, it all makes sense. It just felt like it came out of nowhere. Like, we didn't hear about how it was starting or brewing up and all that. And I fully believe that's all it is. Like, I believe Perrin, actually. You could look at Perrin. He's like, what are you talking about? Like, I haven't done all this stuff. But yeah, he did it before, but he's clean. And yet she did an outstanding job of having that conversation with him, accusing him of this sort of behavior, knowing that Clarice or whatever his name is, was listening, right? She knew this was going to get back to the Empire. And I thought that was pretty tactical of her. I just felt it was kind of surprising for me to see that she went here and she didn't do this before. Like, why wouldn't she have done this before she went down the path of, arranging her daughter?
Well, and maybe she's had some coaching from her new business partner as well. I agree. This was just so out of the blue, and there was no lead up to it at all. They just slap you right into it. And I mean, Genevieve Riley's performance is very compelling and very,
Oh yeah, it's convincing.
yeah, it very much is. And I was with you. I was like, man, what in the world? And he's listening, and then they kind of telegraph it to you later on by saying, well, this would be, this would explain some of the money things that we've seen, the banking transactions or whatever the
Right,
exact dialogue was. I was like, okay, well, this is a really convincing performance by Mon Mothma, in this, but it was just it was just so out of nowhere. And I think that was the only thing that just caught me off guard with it. Looking back, I'm like, okay, this makes a lot of sense.
right.
This is a great cover. I mean, at least a
Mhm.
great explanation. And again, it just, they can lean on the dissension between Perrin and Mon Mothma, and Cloris is going to be able to see that day in and day two, right, as the driver. I did find it interesting he was working for Blevin, though. Did we already know that? It's just been
No,
a
I mean,
while.
we just she assumed. Mothma, when she's talking to Luthen, mentions that they've now given her a new driver, and she suspects that he is part of the Empire. But beyond that, we had no idea that Blevin, of all people,
Yeah,
is
I
the
was really
person that.
curious. Yeah, I was curious it was him, right?
Well, I mean, I guess he might have that sector.
Yeah.
He might have that particular, like Coruscant might be in the 6 or whatever 7 sectors that he's kind of in charge of.
Mhm.
That was kind of news to us, so that's all fine. I don't really care about that. I mean, it could be setting up something for season two, right? We may see this further exploitation of his gambling problems or past sins. There may be more to this than just that. It could also be a way for her to start setting the groundwork to start separating from him. You know what I mean? Like give her a good valid reason to be like, this marriage is off. Like I really want nothing to do with this guy. To what end I don't know, but if I'm going to get out of a marriage, I'm going to start bringing up a bunch of dirt or accusing him of doing things. I mean, this happens in real life, right? People start accusing you of doing things so they can start separating, making a case of why you're not good for them and remove themselves from you.
Yeah, we don't understand Chandrilan customs, understand how feasible that is though either. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways, a lot of things you could take from all of this.
Hmm.
But I think one thing though, this is a pretty short lived cover though, because it would be really easy to go and figure out if Perrin's actually doing these things.
Yes,
So
the
if he
burden
if
of proof is pretty steep. I would agree.
right, yeah, so to prove that he's been doing these activities, in the past might be a little more challenging to do, although probably not with the Empire's resources. But to monitor him and see if he's been doing it ongoing is easy to do.
Right.
And so it's not something she can go to the well on every single time and just say this is going to be the thing to mask it, but it might be the thing to help cover that last transaction that she was so concerned about, and any other transactions that would have been to cover it.
Yeah.
And so that would make a lot more sense. Yeah.
In the chat, DefDog64 says, "Yeah, I wish they had said something about it before." And that's all we're saying. Like it just felt weird that they hadn't, but it's fine. Well, I'm sure there's a reason for it, and we'll know what that is at some point. I do want to make mention quickly, not to be insensitive to those that hated the Last Jedi, but the drop of Canto Bight. Just a quick reminder that as much as you want to bury your head in the sand that that movie didn't exist, it did exist, and Canto Bight is a real place in Star Wars. So you're welcome. Although I did like that she said, "Go do it at Canto Bight," and then the moment I had was like, "Holy crap!" He is like Perrin is one of those a
Yeah.
holes that we see in that movie. Like he is
Yeah.
100% that person, which is cool.
He's one of the 0.1 percenters. Yeah. That would be
Point
out
one percenters of
on the casino planet. Yep.
yeah. Okay, so we switch back over to Cinta and Vel. This was a really awkward scene. Like, I mean, poor you can't help but feel for Vel because it is unrequited love in a lot of ways, at least right now, and we get it. I mean, Cinta's so dedicated to this mission. She didn't even want to like. She didn't even acknowledge her. Like, she forgot to pick her up at the airport or wherever it was because she was so busy, tagging and following Corv along. She was onto something.
Well,
And it
something
ends with that.
something took priority over what
Yeah.
her plans were.
Well, and
Right.
it
Yeah.
goes back to though. Then
The cost comes
whatever's
first.
left or whatever it was,
Ex-
that's what you get. And
exactly. Yeah.
there
We
was
take
nothing
what's
left.
left.
Yeah, because she's been 100% dedicating her entire time and life to the mission, to the cause, especially here at this very crucial moment where the Empire is now descended on Ferrix and they're trying to get Andor. I mean, it all makes sense, but you can't help feel for Vel. And she tells her to come away from the window as like, you know, it's like, put the laptop down, put the phone down, just spend some time with me, kind of thing. And we don't know how that resolved, other than it still feel kind of awkward and bitter, even at the end there. So I don't think they've resolved anything at this point.
Yeah. I don't know how Vel can continue on with that either, because it's not like this is ending anytime soon.
Right.
And Vel, I mean, and when she later on when she notices that she has blood on her hand, and she brushes it off, is like it's not mine.
Hmm.
I couldn't quite understand what Vel's expression was in that moment,
Yeah.
of if it was surprise or satisfaction or what. Um, it,
Yeah.
it, it didn't make sense to me, like how she, or if it was just supposed to be more of a blank look and just move on, move along.
They're almost, yeah, they're almost, there was a hint of like, yeah, cool, you got him kind of thing, but I don't know. It was hard to read her. I couldn't read either. And they did hold that camera on her face and held on her face for, a second and a half. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in her head.
Right.
So it's a very intriguing relationship. And I guess they're still together. Or they're going to be on more missions because both lived, and I would expect to see both of them in season two. I just don't know what capacity and what that's going to be like for them.
Yep.
But let's go back to Clem's brick. So at this point, Andor's in Ferrix. He does go up to this wall. Like I said, now that I look around, like I was trying to watch some of those scenes and like, have they had these bricks with names and stuff on them this whole time? And I've just not been paying attention. I haven't had a chance to go back, but that would be absolutely brilliant if they had done that. Um, but yeah, I really I thought I wish we had more Clem in the series.
Yeah.
He's been a really cool character. He had a funny moment in the very first episode. He seems like he's got a good personality. We know that Andor loved him dearly, and he seems like a father that's got good words for him. But I did see this particular speech as as analogy, or as a uh, paralleling, or not the parallel. What's the word I'm thinking of now? Um, Metaphor for Andor, I guess, is probably what it was. But yeah, I liked what he said. Not us, though, right? Eyes open,
Right.
possibilities everywhere. He says they don't look down, they don't look past the rust. So telling Andor he needs to look down, and so I think some of that sunk in too, right? Again, this coupled with Marva's speeches, I really what moved him to go and take care of his friends and family first before himself.
Well, it was the last part too, the eyes open, possibilities everywhere. That just is. It speaks to who Andor is 100%.
Yeah.
It's someone who's always like we've talked about this throughout the series. Someone who's always observing. There's something in the details everywhere. What is this person doing? You're left-handed. You marching over here. During the Aldani prep. Things like that. Those are the things that make Andor so valuable, and that he's just going to take care of face value and say, well, it looks old. Let's just discard it and get a new one. Well, all you're doing is rewarding someone else for your laziness, basically, right?
Hmm.
And there's benefit in the old, and we had a lot of the same speech with when in the Aldani prep, right? This is an old imperial thing, but it's hardware. It's not it's not one of the newer things, but you can't this is so much more valuable and useful because you can actually repair it. You can use it. It'll keep working if you just take care of it. And so I think a lot of that really speaks to who Andor is, and how you again the Rogue One way of thinking of taking one chance and the next until they expire. You just keep finding your opportunities where you don't even no one else would think that they're even possibly aware that that they exist.
Yeah, hold that thought because I want to come back to it because I think this we I want to come back to we're going to get into Nemec's speech here in just a second, and that line you just quoted from Rogue One, it's like, wow, I have no doubt in my mind this came from Nemec's manifesto at this point. Just quickly following along on the storyline, he goes to the scrapyard, finds out Bix is gone, and that's what leads him to the hotel, right, to go figure out how to get there and rescue her.
Right.
We had a very cool montage, and the fact that all of this was happening on the eve of a thunderstorm, right? The thunder was rolling in the background, right? A storm is coming. That was all kind of signaling, which was kind of cool, just the atmosphere that they were providing here. But it was really neat that we got, there were shots of Bix in this speech. We had Luthen. There was parts with Cassie and Andor was in there. But what for you stood out from this speech? And I'd have it in the show notes here. I don't know if there's anything that in particular that you want to kind of touch on. I've got a couple things, but what resonated with you?
I think it was the idea that freedom is a pure idea. I mean, you can't get any more fundamental, I think, than that. And but there are other things within there. Authority is brittle, right? Oppression is the mask for fear. Those small little tidbits inspire in very subtle ways, right? Because what they start to say is they start to break down the power of someone else, and they start to say they are they behave these ways because they know that it's so fragile and that they are at risk of losing it because they don't know how to maintain it. They don't know how to keep it. It's unnatural. It's not the way of things. It's not the order of things,
Hmm.
right? And and again, at the end of the day, all you have to be able to do in order to challenge that, it seems just so simple, and it's a simple three-letter word, right? Try.
Hmm.
And so it was just incredible. I mean, it's just you break it down to its simplest, aspects, and to just tell someone to try just seems so simple. It's just so basic,
Yeah,
you know,
and
and,
that's
and
yeah,
for some that's just impossibly simple. It can't be that easy. Well, you don't know unless I mean that's where the whole thing. You don't know unless you try, right? You
hmm
don't know what you're capable of unless you step out of your comfort zone. And you are someone else is already outside their comfort zone, and that's why they're working so hard. They're trying to exert their will on you, but they're working really hard at keeping something that's a very unnatural place, unnatural order.
yeah, yeah, and that last the remember this try That is Cassie Andor saying, "And we try again," or what is it he says? I forget now.
It was Jen
Um,
Urso, yeah.
yeah, Jen Erso says, "We try again," right? That becomes kind of like a mantra of the rebellion, even if it's not directly shared. That is at the heart of the rebellion. It's you try because of hope, right? Hope is what drives the desire to continue the fight and trying to win the war, kind of thing. All of that, you know, thematically plays really well into this era of Star Wars. Going back to the speech itself, I mean, there's, when as I was hearing this, I couldn't help but think of like Rebels,
Yeah.
A New Hope, all of the moments that we had in the original trilogy, even, thinking about Ewoks and, what they did, right? Of these little wars that are going on. They don't even realize that they're fighting this war, that they're in it. But
It
then when
really
he gets into this,
encapsulated like the entire saga timeline well of
yeah,
like you said, everything from Rebels and Precinct, or I guess Rebels is probably about the earliest we have of the rebellion, all the way through, or maybe Bad Batch now, all the way from Bad Batch all the way
sure.
through Return of the Jedi is pretty incredible how it just encapsulated all of that in
Yep.
just a handful of sentences.
Yeah. But then in the second part of the speech, it was almost it was signaling what we were going to see, what we were going to witness, right? The imperial need for control is so desperate because it's so unnatural. Tyranny requires constant effort. You think about the amount of effort they had to go through just to get, the Ferrix people situated and in control, and then keep them in control once things got out of hand.
They're
Uh,
building a Death Star. I mean, that's the I mean,
right? Yeah.
yeah.
It breaks, it leaks. Authority is brittle. Oppression is the mask of fear. And you think about the oppression that was happening there. That was happening because they were scared. I mean, you could see it all over Kisak's and Tigo's face. They were scared, as
Yeah.
well as many of the Imperials.
Yeah. Hold the line, hold the line. I mean, they were trembling as they said it during those events
Yep.
because I mean, they were I think more concerned about their own individual safety, but yeah.
And then look at the person, right, who's the face of the Empire in this series so far, which would be Dedra Miro, and how just scared she was when she was brought in. I mean, of course, yeah, she almost got trampled and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, it just speaks to how scared they were of this. And we talked about this in the last episode. I mean, there's more of us, to quote Lando Calrissian, but we knew there were going to be more people than they could really fend off at any point. Um,
Yeah,
but the
they're not prepared. So the Empire is so used to working. I mean, ISB is such a perfect example of this too.
mhm,
They're so used to working in their pristine white environment and their freshly pressed uniforms. And yes, we'll stage an accident and we'll do this, and then we'll basically ambush Krieger and company, right? And that's the nature of dirty work for them. Or we'll send a platoon, we'll send a whole garrison, and we'll wipe out this insurgency, whatever it is. To experience what they experienced on Ferrix, they're not prepared for, especially folks like Dedra Miro, who have no idea what real boots on the ground insurrection looks like and feels like, and the chaos of it all,
yeah.
because it's so against the order they're trying to forcefully create. And so that it's that terrifying is not a surprise. And I thought it was really important to see that terror on Dedra Miro's face when it finally became very real for her, of saying what this is. I'm really curious what that means for her character going forward too, and how she takes this forward.
Yeah. The Yeah, the last part of it was these moments of defiance will have flooded the banks of the Empire's authority, and then there will be one too many, one single thing that will break the siege. And that, for me, would that be the death of the Death Star, or the destruction of the Death Star?
It's
That's kind of where my mind went. Although,
Or it's Luke Skywalker, or it's Jyn Erso, or it's
yeah,
the getting of the beaming of the plans to you know, uh, with the Death Star plans. I mean, there's so many things I think, but that's also the point. It's also there's always one thing that has to get you over the hump to the next,
yeah,
right? And then the dam opens, but it doesn't mean, and that's why we have Empire Strikes Back, right? The Empire closed the dam, everything gets back in shape. They seal the wound, but something else has got to take it to that next level after that. And so it's not always just one and done. It's got to be there's always something that has to push you to that next level to bring you to that next tier in order to make that next bit of difference before you get to the final. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, you could argue that it's a variety of things. I mean, the most obvious would be the chosen one,
Hmm.
but yeah, and then that's the one last, key that you were trying to unlock the door with.
Yeah, no, that's how I interpret it too. I mean, to me, the obvious like one moment, at least from the Jedi aside, is probably Luke Skywalker blowing up the Death Star. Right, that really put them on their heels. However, to your point, I think there are many times when this happens, and all the ones you came up with, just to throw in, the siege of Lothal or the defending of Lothal is another example of where they kind of held their ground, very similar to Ferrix, and didn't allow the Empire to win that war. Of course, they had Jedi, but again, different story.
I think it would be kind of a fun reference if it was a side reference to Luke Skywalker, though, and a show that's so, no Jedi type of show, which I think is fantastic, by the way. I'm really glad that this is where it ended up. No lightsabers, nothing crazy like that. But it would be kind of a cool reference if it did. Like,
Yeah,
hey, we know that whole Skywalker thing's a thing.
yeah,
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah,
it would
we're
be
on
cool,
board with
but I
we're
think
on
you're
board with that.
yeah, I think it's more like you said. I think it's more situational, right? It's all these little wars, all these little skirmishes that he's talking about. Okay, so let's go to quickly with on Ferrix. Dedra gets her little briefing. Um, they kind of talk about how they've been doing a little bit of negotiating, right? Some give and take with the locals there, and they feel like they have it under control. I mean, they said 30, we gave them 40. They wanted you do it longer. We pushed it back 2 hours, etc. So this is all funny because this all flies in their face later. Like the people don't care. They don't give a crap. They're gonna do what they do, and they did what they did, and which is what obviously leads to the big battle at the very end. But
Well, it was clever how they did it too, right? Because they split it into two different areas. And what wasn't clear to me if this was the normal custom, or if they did this in opposition to what the Empire's structure that they were given. And that was the part that was unclear. And in the Vulture article, it seemed like it was a bit of the latter. It was really like this was their way of getting around some of those rules, and the Empire didn't notice it until it was too late. Although I'd be like, how dumb is the Empire then? But I think the one part that I found interesting about this though was the thing that rattled the Imperials the most was the anvil, was the time grappler. They
mhm.
did not expect that to be part of the ceremony, and that ever present, you know, ringing of the anvil throughout the entire thing was just this almost like this pulse that goes through it. Of course, it was silent sometimes, but when everything gets heated, having that in the background was just it was like a war chime at that point. It was just really really cool, like the way that they utilized it.
Yeah, and I took it as the latter as well. Like they didn't do anything different than they normally would have done, right? And I mean, maybe there was a little bit extra, right? Because the Empire was there and they wanted to make a showing of it in some ways. But either way, I think they kind of held to their customs and um, they weren't going to be told what to do by, the Empire. So true rebellions in that, or rebels in that regard. All right. So we talked about Blevin and Clarice kind of reporting into what's going on there. Um, So there's a question in the chat said, so who was the senator daughter meeting at the end? So that is Davo's son. So if you didn't catch a couple episodes ago, he's uh, what is he? Well, not a scoundrel. He's a,
Well, he's he makes things happen. He's basically oh gosh, what is the word?
I wouldn't say gangster, but he
No,
deals in
she
shady.
she
He's
calls
got
him
some
a
shadiness
thug.
to him, right?
Yeah, I
What she
mean,
called him?
Mon Mothma calls him a thug, I believe.
Okay.
But yeah, he's definitely powerful. He has banking connections. He runs a business that helps people monitor and move all their monies around, and has a lot of connections to the underground. It seems like underworld. So not a great guy, but yeah. So that's his kiddo.
Yep. But yeah, this is where we get those two. Well, prior to that, I'm sorry, we didn't really talk on the Anto Krieger thing. We talked about whether or not they would show it. I think we were both in agreement that they would not show it. They did not show it, and that's okay. Like we said, that was going to be their victory. I have a question
Yeah,
that
we kind
I
of got
want
the
to.
war room, which I think we called on that one too,
Yeah,
which is kind of
yeah.
cool. Yeah.
I have a question that I want to cover in the Patreon episode, and that's just whether or not, like, what's the aftermath of the situation on Ferrix, because on one hand, they had did some pretty good things, and what does he say? Today was about wiping the taste of Aldani from the Emperor's mouth. You know, you want to start a conversation, find Axis, is what Pendergrass tells her, right? So in their minds, they did exactly what Luthen was saying. The Empire is walking away with this is like, we did it, right? Mission accomplished. We've really stuck it to them. This is going to make a change, or it's going to change things for them. But at the end of the day, I mean, they've lost a bigger battle, and maybe they just don't realize it yet. In Ferrix, right? Ferrix was probably more important than what was happening over with Antel Krieger. So we'll
Yeah,
get into that
yeah,
speculation, I guess, on the Patreon
yeah,
episode about where the Empire's at.
yeah. We will
Uh,
do that.
So, so then we get into yeah. So Deidre really being ticked off as well. Like I actually felt bad for her. Like it feels like they just kind of went around her, and knowing that, you know,
I love her
had
line. I love her line. Like someone in the room has to be the one to say these things, right?
yep,
To
yep,
basically say, we need people alive. We need answers. We need information. I can't be the only. She's just basically in her head, just screaming. I can't be the only one who can tell you guys how to operate without, just whipping it out and shooting everybody all the time.
exactly,
So you
yep,
just guys just want to shoot first, ask questions later, and this happens on Ferrix too, and everything escalates super quick as well when she's expressly giving them their orders, and they go back to this other nature of just this primitive fight or flight type of ways of doing things. But I mean, just to reference the other one though, you can feel that frustration, like with how she's if I'm not there, everything's working against me. And
yep,
but Pendergrass, I mean, his point was well taken though. They needed to do something to show the Emperor specifically that they are in control and they had a response to what happened on Aldani. And so from his perspective, while that's not the long game necessarily, I think it was meaty enough as to someone important like Anto Krieger that they take him off the map and they take him off the playing board, that would satisfy for at least a bit, temporarily, in order to buy them a little bit of breathing room. And so I think, while I don't think it was a bad measure, I think it was still it was definitely short sighted. But for what they wanted to accomplish and needed to accomplish, I mean, they likely got that. And the Emperor probably only pays it so much mind because he's got a much bigger plan in mind anyway. But it probably got them off their backs a little bit.
yeah. Well, we'll see. Yeah, I do feel bad for her because I just don't understand. And then she was constantly telling people throughout this episode, stop trying to kill everybody. Like, we want to capture these people. We need the intel. Like, she's the one that's out there doing her job, doing the job correctly. And yet, these guys are all, you know, bloodthirsty. They want a quick win. And I get why Pendergrass says what he says. I mean, that's probably going to win favor from the Emperor, and that's probably more important, right? If self-preservation, but
The interesting
doesn't
this is
make for
what
a
the
good
Empire's
intelligence bureau.
this is what the Empire has cultivated though.
Yeah,
Is
exactly.
people power hungry and just willing that just will go in there and shoot first, ask questions later, exert your control, exert your authority, and then expect everyone to fall in line.
Yeah,
So I
it's the dark
mean,
side. It's Palpatine. It's Vader.
they're doing exactly what they were trained to do. So
Yep.
she was trained to do it. She's just has half a brain, and I mean that's a positive thing here. I'm not demeaning her in any kind of way, but she's got that other half of her brain is functioning, and she could be like, wait, wait a minute, hey, no, there's more to this. So she's more Admiral Thrawn like than what some of these other guys are.
Yeah, no, it's a good reference. Like, she's just trying to work within the system, even though she knows the system is fallible, and she probably just shakes her head half the time, like Thrawn does. Like, I can't believe I work with these imbeciles half the time.
Right, yeah. I mean, and Thrawn gets that too, right? He
Oh yeah,
understands that you have to throw that bone every once in a while and say, okay, I need to show progress and show this, but she doesn't have the sway though that a Thrawn has to be able to say, here's why we're going to not do that here though. And hers is only falling against a very limited scope of people who really don't have that sway or that kind of authority anyway, or they definitely don't want to stick their neck on the line to be able to say, no, you're right. This is definitely what we should be doing. And she doesn't have the central authority to do it on her own.
Mhm. So the next scene is between Cassian and Brasso, where they're meeting in the underground tunnels that they quickly referenced in one of the early episodes, but they came.
Best man hug ever, by the way.
Yeah, it was a pretty good man hug, especially when he did the whole like,
Yeah, Andor was
grasping of the
really,
wrist.
yeah, Andor was really, yeah, leaning into that one. It was really, actually, it was really heartwarming to see that.
Well, he's a big guy, and Andor's got like little arms, so you got to
No,
get the
but it
wrist
was
in
like
there.
but it was a genuine hug though. I mean, he was leaning in all the way. It was really
Yeah.
good. It was very heart touching,
Prior
heartwarming.
to this, I thought it was funny when they were, I think it was Corv or whoever was, staking out the place and noticed that the person coming out wasn't him. It looked like him, but it wasn't. I had a moment of Spaceballs there where he's like, they captured the stunt double. It looked like Brasso's stunt double had walked out of the the apartment there. But I'm sure that's not what happened. And then Brasso tells Andor this this whole speech verbatim, which is fine. I get it. I was like, wow, he remembered every single word and delivered it very powerfully. So maybe it was written. I would have preferred he pulled out something because it was just too. I don't know. I thought it was a great speech.
Little too clean. Yeah,
A little
a little
too
too clear.
clean, too perfected, too polished to be
He
delivering in
was
the
up all
sewers in a
night.
moment like that.
He was up all night every night for the last 3 nights practicing.
Practicing it. But yeah, tell him none of this was his fault. It was already burning. He's just the first spark of the fire. I can't help but think of Poe Dameron in
Yeah.
later in the movies. He knows everything he needs to know and feels everything he needs to feel. And when that day comes and those two pull together, he will be an unstoppable force for good. I love him more than anything he could ever do wrong. I mean, spoken by like a true mother, right? Child can
Right.
do no harm, kind of thing. But I think he needed to hear that, right? I mean, that was all of these things led him to the moment that we see at the very end, which is makes sense, I think.
Well, it makes the last episode so much more heartbreaking, though, of, when he's telling Zan to tell Marva that, she would be so proud of me.
Yeah,
And to hear this and not be able to hear her say it, though, still has to have a bit of a sting to it of sorts.
hmm
That's the one thing that he finally understands what she was trying to say or where she was, what path that she was on. And now that he's on board with that, they finally aligned only for that to come to an abrupt end and not to be able to share that moment and share that conversation directly is got to be something that's very difficult for him to, nice and comforting to hear, not the way that he wanted to hear it though.
yeah. Not to jump ahead, but we do that a lot. The Marva's speech, like we never got to see her death on screen. I think we talked about that was pretty shocking to start off. Last episode or was it last? Yeah, Daughter of Ferrix. To
Yeah.
start off that episode with her already being dead and us not witnessing that on screen. I think I was still kind of, losing sleep over that decision and feeling cheated out by not having seen that. But at the same time, like especially now with this episode, this whole thing, this whole speech that she just gave him here, and then her speech that she gives to the city or the community. I don't know. It felt like it was okay. I felt better after that. Like even though he never got to
It
see that,
makes a
he
lot
at
more
least got to
sense.
witness that. What's
Yeah, it
that?
makes a lot more sense. It makes a lot more sense now of
Yeah,
why they wouldn't do that. Because I mean, you want her to have the last say. Now,
yeah,
I think this is a fantastic way of giving her own eulogy, and again, Tony Gilroy, this was conscience. He's like, I can get away with not showing her death because she is going to come back,
yeah.
and give this speech to everyone directly, and it's going to be powerful, and it's going to be her final words said to everyone at the same time in her own, like, from her. And I think that was just exceptionally more powerful than hearing it on her deathbed with just 2 or 3 people and not Cassian. But for this to be heard by Luthen and to be held by Vel, Cinta, Cassian, the Empire, all of the Imperials, this cast of people, Bix as well. I mean, for it to hit everyone at the same time, including just the citizens of Ferrix, I mean, I think was just way more important than it to be a very intimate affair,
Right
and
between the
see
two
it
of them.
right and see it in kind of in like your and my own kind of selfish ways. If we would like to see these more intimate moments like that, and this one, I think it just made so much more sense. It was just so much more powerful that it go this way, and I we I wasn't expecting this necessarily that she would come back and give her own eulogy. I think we had we kind of discussed that maybe there was going to be some sort of eulogy given that was going to fire things up, but
Yeah, or
I
funeral
got to be honest.
procession, or yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't think it would be Marva doing it herself, though.
But it's very Star Warsy.
Yeah, it is.
So
Yeah, I
I
mean,
wonder,
think
like,
about it. I mean, it's like Princess Leia, giving a speech. Like when they finally get R2, working with the restrainer bolt off, and she gives a little speech in that one too, right? And
mhm.
I mean, these types of things are exceptionally powerful, and they
Or the one
motivate.
that,
This is the hero's journey. This is the call, right?
yep. Well, and she got two uses out of that speech because it had the same effect on Luke in The Last Jedi when he was on that when R2 played it to get
Yep.
him off his butt. There there was something else I was going to ask or comment on. Oh, quickly as an aside on that Vulture article, not to keep bringing up the Vulture article, but please go read that if you haven't had a chance. Uh, I think we got confirmation that Kino Loy knew that he couldn't swim, that he'd been thinking about it that day.
Yeah, I thought about you so much whenever I saw that. Yeah, that
Yeah,
he
I
was
was like,
thinking about it the
yes,
entire.
yes.
Nicely done,
That's
sir.
that. But to me, that's more powerful. Like I love the fact that that's awesome. Like he went through with it, even though he knew his death was sealed. It was more about the people and more about that. So, but anyways,
And it
I
makes a lot
just,
more sense why he just kept shouting one way out like
yep.
every single time, and just if anything, just to motivate himself to keep moving, even
Yes.
though he knew what was coming.
Yeah, poor dude. I hope in season 2 at some point Andor has a moment to use that line to motivate people or whatever it is. I'd love to hear that as a callback, kind of honor Kino Loy in that
That
regard.
would that'd probably be a pretty dark instance, but yeah.
One way out. Well, maybe they're shopping and there's like, there's a bunch of people in their stand. They can't determine, do I go through the exit or the entrance door? And he's like, no, one way out. You go through the right side door. Okay, so I got a question. I got a question for that was not my best joke. I got a question though for you because I on when we finally see Cyril and Moss, and we were talking about whether Moss was going to show up,
Mosk
and
is
he
like
does.
he's the most disappointing character in this episode. Like
Well,
that
he
poor
had the
guy.
right idea when it was all over, though.
Yeah, just sit back and take
Swig from
two
a
swigs.
flask.
Yeah. Yeah. One's not
Yeah,
good enough, take a second. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
That
mean,
was
he
so
was
bad.
doing it right.
The guy didn't do anything this one.
But why did he? Okay, so what was it, the hat thing? And I'm
Oh,
not. I don't
this
know.
was super cute though. I think this was them acknowledging like, hey, we're bros, right? Yeah, we're bros.
Was that it, or was it? I was trying to remember. Like, did they? Was it like, okay, this hat is better suited on you, or fits you better,
I
or
don't know.
you're
Guy,
the
dude, guy love is weird love. So
okay,
it's just you just see it at face value and be like, this is their way of expressing kindred spirits.
right? We're back.
Good to see you. I'm you know, we're we're brothers. Yeah, guy love is weird love.
All right. I loved it. I loved it. I thought it was
It was super cute. It was super cute. And I'll stand by that comment too, that it was cute. Because it was. It was so awkward that it was absolutely cute.
yeah. There was like a moment of levity,
That's
in
how
the midst of everything going on. We
this
had
is
that
how
this one
guys
scene.
work. Yeah, this is how guys work sometimes. We don't know how to express like affection towards one another sometimes.
Yep. I mean, you and I have exchanged hats many, many times, so I
Oh,
don't know why it feels foreign to me, but
we exchange lots of things. But
okay.
that's probably too much information.
Sorry, I went on mute. I wasn't trying to give you awkward silence. I went on mute there.
No, it was probably actually quite appropriate that you did, so it was fine.
um. Let's see. Okay, so we get the Vel and Luthen moment, which was the shocking moment for me because not shocking, but it was
Unexpected, yeah.
unexpected, and it cleared up the fact that, yeah, I guess Luthen really did call the order. Like Leia was just following,
Well, let's back up though. Luthen went to Ferrix. Why?
Well,
Why?
no, we didn't.
We didn't really get here. Yeah, Luthen
Nope.
went to Ferrix. I mean,
We
it was
knew
just
he would go to Ferrix.
yeah. We kind of thought it was just. I guess it was just to make sure that they took out Andor. I mean, so we did get confirmation that he wants Andor dead.
Yep.
Which is a little bit counterintuitive, but okay.
I mean,
But
he went through all the trouble to get him.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's cost him a lot, and maybe that's part of it. And maybe they should because it's cost so much, and that there's no guarantee on that deal that you've got to just cover up. I mean, you just tie up your loose ends, I suppose, right?
Hmm. I love that he asks her, "Is it a woman?" She says, "You know that." She says, "You know her." He says, "Not yet." Like it's just this more confirmation that Luthen has so much intelligence, even if he may not. I think he clearly knows who it is, right? I mean, he's playing a game with her. He's not giving her all the information because I would expect Lonnie has already tipped him off too, or maybe give him the intel on who was the lead investigator at
I
the
think he
ISB for
did.
the Andor situation.
Well, I think he did. When that in the
Oh, when they're underground.
underbelly. Yeah, yeah. So I think he did
Okay,
give her the name. Yeah, yeah, give
all
him
right,
her
that makes
name.
more sense then.
But he doesn't. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we also got her the oh, it's going to happen. The funeral's going to happen in a few more hours or whatever, and suddenly the Hell's bells start ringing, uh, which is the same beat as Hell's bells from ACDC. I played them together. I was thinking about doing a video for that, but
You're one of those people that does like the Wizard of Oz with the Dark Side of the Moon, huh?
oh yeah, yeah, I've done that many times. It lines up. Um, okay, so this starts the big tension moments, right? The big build up to Rick's Road. This is where the band picks up their music instruments as they start playing. The Empire looks shocked. Vel and Luthen are surprised. You got Cyril and Moss kind of moving in. All of these things are just happening. And again, the way this is cut, it's so masterful, and doesn't really make for good, you know, speculation and discussion because it's just a rapid succession of different scenes. But it all certainly makes sense. I did see that there. It looked like they had, and you might remember this more from the article, the Vulture article, but it seemed like there were different groups coming together. It wasn't just the Daughters of Ferrix, right? Is that true, or was it like why did they all have different like costumes on or different colored uniforms or whatever it was they were wearing?
Yeah, it was difficult, and I don't know if so. Even Brasso had the same style of outfit on as the Daughters of Ferrix. I don't know if there's a Sons of Ferrix as well,
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
they just mentioned the daughters, and of course there was a just a the populace as well. But yeah, this is ceremonial type of garb. I think in some respects of what they do for a central character in the community or central person in the community that this is their I don't know their Sunday attire, their morning, if you will, their morning
Hmm.
attire. So something to that effect. But yeah, if I remember the scene right, it was all kind of a V, V shape into the center of the square down Rix Road. So I don't know. I don't know what Rix Road is specifically. And there's not a sign that says Rix Road as far as I've been able to tell. So, but it definitely had a channel of everything into a central part of the square, which I'm guessing maybe became the primary Rix Road there that we see
Yeah,
in
that's how I
where
interpret
she's
it.
actually at. Yeah,
Yeah, that's like Main Street, right?
yeah,
Of sorts.
right.
We saw Wilmon with his bomb. You've got Cord coming into the crowd. He's kind of walking around. You got Cinta trailing behind him, just right behind him, ready to stab him in the back. And then Andor spots Luthen. And I think that's the moment he realizes, holy crap, something's not right here. Why is, I mean, he's got to be, he knows everybody's out for him at this point. But the fact that Luthen has shown up as well, that seems pretty surprising. Um, We get the Nurchi with the credit scene. Oh, I want to ask you this too. So Cyril, when he comes down into the crowd, like he almost runs out there, and I think it's Mosk or no, is it Mosk that stops him? No, that's with when he sees Deidre. But like he's about to rock out there, and then the Imperials stop him and push him back, and then he turns around and walks up the stairs, and Luthen looks over at him, but I don't think he recognized him. Like it didn't seem like it. And to be fair, he didn't really. I don't remember him ever actually seeing Cyril's face because he was kind of standing back in the shadows, being the ominous voice of "just kill him" kind of thing when he was telling Andor that, right?
Yeah, I couldn't remember if he saw if got a clean look at him when they had that encounter or not, because it seemed like he might have recognized him a little bit, but again, he didn't respond in a way. But Luthen doesn't really give his emotions. He doesn't have a real strong tell
Yeah,
anyway. And to go back to the Andor when he saw Luthen, I think that's when it cemented in Andor's mind that there's only one reason why Luthen's here is that he thinks I'm going to be here, and that's to kill me and to
yeah,
take me off the board. So I think that's when it finally cemented in what this actually meant for Cassian.
yep. Um, and then Andor, we get the physical, literal brick, right, of Marva walking in. Brasso's carrying that. Again, kind of weird, kind of creepy, but at the same time, cool that they've given this. added dimension or layer to the culture of barracks.
Stone and sky, stone and sky.
Yeah. So the stone being the brick and the sky being the hologram. Is that right? The hollow image. Because they were
What?
all looking up at the sky, and they kept saying stone. They would show the brick, and then sky, and then we'd cut over to Marva's image up there at the top. I, that's how I interpreted. Otherwise, I don't know what the sky, what's in the sky. I didn't get that part then.
Yeah, I don't know if that was the equivalent of heaven or what that might, because she talks about lifting, others up as well, almost like they're in the sky lifting others up to be closer to
Hmm.
them in some way. So I viewed it more in that and kind of somewhat of a more religious type of way that we might equate it to. I don't know if that was the intent or not, but that's how my brain rationalized it a little bit as well.
Yeah, I think I took it too literal then. Um, it was kind of sad seeing. Oh well, the question I had about that was they cut over to Andor, and Andor's watching as that brick's coming in, and I don't know. It was the wind was blowing, and they hold on him for a few seconds here, but it was kind of depressing because I think it all kind of really hit him at that point. Like that's my mom, and she's already been put into a brick, and I really did miss it. And this is really happening right now, which was kind of sad. And then on top of that, they cut over to Bix, who's just sitting there like humming the song, Stone in Sky. She can't do more than that. So all that was a pretty great little sequence of shots.
Well, it was almost sweet in a way though too for Bix, because you could see those more, I don't want to say primitive or primal, but those deep rooted, those deep seated beliefs or the things you've grown up with, they just kind of come out inherently, right? The things you don't even know lie within you. They're such a part of who you are and what you've grown up with and what you've experienced and what you've just lived. And Marva says in her speech, they've been on this road for this, for a funeral, countless times, of course. And so they hear these things and it's just a part of their culture and who they are. And that those her singing and humming to the tune just comes naturally because it's just part of it's as much a celebratory event than it is a mourning event as well. And so it was kind of sweet to be able to see some of that coming out of Bix, that she's still in there, even though she's been broken down to this level.
Yeah. Yeah, I agreed there. Let's see. So from there, are we at the? Oh, so we get the. We talked about. Or we speculate whether or not Cyril would profess his love to um, Dedra, and we'll get to that scene here in a bit. But he like almost runs out to her like to go talk to her again, and I think it was Moss that pulled him back, like, "Whoa, boy, easy, easy. Just you got to take it slow, kind of
Right.
thing." But definitely still caught up in her. Like he's certainly infatuated and sees her differently after the events that happened. Um, the music starts to pick up, the pace picks up, they start kind of moving in faster. Wasn't expecting that. Corv is moving in, everything just picks up at this point, and Tigo is like still shouting at people to kill. Like that guy's just an idiot. I think he lived, didn't he?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, what a moron. Um, okay, and then Cassian heads into the hotel, and he's kind of using. He kind of seizes the moment, right? Everybody is so hyper focused on the funeral procession and the image of Marva and all that that he uses this moment to get into the hotel because everybody's distracted. Um, and let's talk about Marva's speech. This is another really wonderful written speech, very well delivered. And I don't know if there's again same kind of thing here. I don't know if there's anything in particular. I won't read the whole. It's a very long speech, but what were some of the standout lines or moments for you in the speech, and why?
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean, it's just too many to count, I guess. Really, I think some of the ones were just the comments around sleeping, right?
Hmm.
And that I don't know, it was that they've been there the entire time. This isn't something that's been happening. And it is, again, we talked about this with, Luthen listening to this speech before, is that, we did what they wanted and they left us alone. We kept the trade lanes open. We just ignored them and they left us alone. And they wanted stuff. We gave it to them. They paid us. They left us alone. But they were always there. It was the underlying theme, right? They were just always present. And it was a truth. And I think she said that it was a truth that she didn't want to face, right? That she didn't really have to, but not leaving. And so you don't have a choice. You have to. And it's their responsibility because they were the ones who let it fester and grow, even if they didn't do so intentionally. And it's not a aberration of the people around her. She takes it on herself too. She says, you know, we've been sleeping, but hey, I am too. And it's easy for the dead to tell you to go fight, but if I had the opportunity to do it all over again and start this sooner, you know, I she would have done it from day one, because then not to allow her home to become, you know, what it is right now, and to experience what they're having to do, you know. And but you know, when it comes to like certain lines that are just super powerful though, the empire is a disease that thrives in darkness and is never more alive than when we sleep. I think it was just, and I think that's the scene where it's focused on Luthen, and it's just so incredibly powerful because the diseased aspect of it, you can't help but picture Palpatine with darkness, of course. And whenever you have this, whenever you allow this disease to take over, it just spreads without, you know, without any kind of check and balance. And so it's that was probably the most, you know, that was probably the most exciting moment for me, is to hear that and
Yeah.
then see it with Luthen's face. And I think he maybe even closed his eyes. You can just feel it absorbing into him, and just this validation of sorts. But I'm really curious. I would love to hear Stellan Skarsgård of, you know, what he believes the character was feeling in that moment. And Tony Gilroy didn't really touch on that. I don't recall any article. There were several other articles, but they're all behind paywall, so I couldn't go read some of the follow up articles. It was kind of like what they do on Vanity Fair. It's not just one; they do like three or four. You know.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'd love to see if there were more to be taken from how the characters interpreted the speech and what it meant on that side of things. But what were some things for you though?
No, I think all of those are great. The sleeping aspects, just that, you know, her talking about that is very symbolic of what's happening during this time, right? It all started with Palpatine rising to power and doing that, you know, in under the veil of, you know, justice, or, you know, liberty, or, you know, peace and prosperity, or whatever the hell he was using to pitch himself up there to get the power that he got. You know, that line of, there's a wound that won't heal at the center of the galaxy. You know, in my head, the center of the galaxy is always Coruscant. And I think of the wound being somebody like Palpatine, or I think of like the wound in the Force. I mean, if you want to get, not to bring in KOTOR, but if you want to get to like the wound of the Force, right? And you talk about Darth Nihilus and just the dark side and the presence that it does have. There's, I don't know if that was intentional, but that's what that those things kind of were conjured for me. But she says when she talks about the empire is the disease that thrives in darkness, it's so funny to hear her say that, and then you pair that up with what Partagrass says at the very beginning about what the ISB does. You know, what does he say? They're a health. Basically, says they're same kind of thing, right? In his mind, he's of the same thing. They're out there trying to stomp out these smaller illnesses and these diseases, and yet you know, the juxtaposition is the fact that you've got these people here that are looking at the empire in the same kind of light. So very interesting. I'm sure that was intentional in the way they did it. But then the very last part of it is, I'd wake up early and be fighting these bastards from the start, fight the empire. Like, the whole speech was very moving, motivational. I know Gary just talked about it, you know, Independence Day. There's been a lot of great speeches.
Eat your heart out. Independence Day speech is what he said.
Yeah. Or, you know, Lord of the Rings. And there's a great speech in there. It's very similar. I'm trying to think of other movies where someone's given this rousing speech. Henry V. I always think of that one, Kenneth Branagh and his delivery of that speech. But yeah, I mean, it turns into this like really motivational sweeping. And then she's just like, fight these bastards. Like, it's just so funny. It's like so on point and so in character of Marva being kind of like that first rebel, like one of the very first rebels that ever existed. And to have this, to be able to have so much power and so much influence even after death is, I don't know. I love it. I love the fact that they did that with her. And that was enough to start it.
And at the beginning of her speech, she says something like, it precipitates that a little bit too. I was always eager, always waiting to be fired. So she didn't make them wait very long before she just threw it out there and gave them the inspiration, and really just kind of lit the fuse for them of what they needed. Of course, them going over and turning over B2 is enough to spark any rebellion as far as I'm concerned. you don't mess with that cuteness.
Yeah, I mean that was really it. That was the kind of the turning point. But I just one quick thing on the speech I forgot to mention. I thought she did a really good job. Well, the writers did a good job, but Marva did a really good job of setting the stage of really bringing in talking about the culture, right? Talking about the Stones and when she felt it. I heard our music, felt our history, right? Really connecting with the people first, and giving them that identity that the Empire is trying to take away from them, and then turning the whole thing on its head and saying, okay, now, go kill the bastards. I thought that was brilliant on her part to kind of give that speech.
Absolutely.
I think I'm going to go ahead and record my death speech tomorrow because I don't know that, when I'm on death's bed, if I'm going to have the energy to get up and give a rousing speech. So I'll give it tomorrow.
Okay. But are you going to be able to keep it to yourself for the next,
No,
4
we'll
years?
stream it on YouTube. It'll be available. So you can just play it whenever I do pass.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if we're going to review it and edit it and
Yeah,
make
we'll
sure
edit it.
cleaned up the audio a little bit.
Clean up the audio. Take the ums out. One thing that really stood out for me in the speech was Woolman's, like the actor. I forget his name. I need to look it up now. But when they cut to his face and he's crying, holy crap! Like that was, and he did a really good job throughout this episode. 100, like in every episode, every scene that he had been, and he was just a character that I really didn't pay attention to. Right, as far as I was concerned, he was the controversial Adidas pullover sweatshirt dude. Right.
Right.
But I thought he did an amazing job of conveying such pain and anger and tension as that speech was going on. So kudos to him for doing that.
I'm going to paste his name in the chat because I don't want to butcher his name here, but this is the actor for Wilmon.
Muhannad Bayer?
Bayer,
Bayer?
something, hopefully something close to that. But there you go. That's
great.
name.
So I'm really looking forward. I mean, I just say that because I didn't realize he had the acting chops to give us something like that. It seemed very visceral, very raw. And for me, going back to what we talked about very early on about him in season 2 and whether or not, he'd be paired up with Andor or Brasso. I just want to see that because I think this actor has a lot of potential in him. So it'd be really great to kind of see him have more opportunities.
I like that him and Brasso were connected too, though. They were almost maybe not feeding off one another, but you could just sense that tension and that you could just like the crowd as a whole was represented just in the faces of these two characters where things were just building to the point. And even someone like Brasso, who is typically, unwavering in kind of his stoicism in some ways, was able to start getting motivated and get empowered that they need to take back their home and that he's been repressing it more than anything else. And then he's also got this young kid over here who is, taking matters in his own hands and experienced loss significantly, directly at the hands of the Empire. And yeah, it's they were able to connect in that other way too.
Yeah. So at this point, this is when all hell kind of breaks loose, right? They go over, they knock B2. I think Tigo comes over and knocks over B2. And then Brasso, there's two, this is Sparta or this is Ferrix moments. If you notice right here, he hits somebody with a brick, I think, or he does something at first. And then Brasso turns and he like kicks one of the Imperial agents off to the side. And then we get the second, this is Ferrix moment up in the bell tower with the time grappler doing the same thing. So I don't know, this must be some kind of local martial art move that's done by the Ferrix people, right? I would imagine that's the only explanation. And then we get we get Cassian killing an imp. The time grappler starts going crazy on the drum. I think you talked about that. I mean, if this scene wasn't already hot and lit and fired up, I mean, that drum was just fueling the fire for these people. I mean, it was like the drums of war that you could hear.
Hey, when you're the time grappler and you've just got 9 or 10 times a day when you're out there bringing the same bell, the same time, the same way, and you look for a little bit of excitement to stir you up, and you get motivated, man.
Yeah.
He takes that job seriously. So whenever he has an opportunity to do something a little bit different, damn well better believe he's going to come and bring that bell.
Yep.
He probably had his headbuds in with Hell's Bells playing.
With Hell's Bells from ACD playing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That was his soundtrack for Revolution.
Yep. You laugh. I'm going to put this to music. You wait.
I can't wait.
I felt another sad moment for Bix when she comes in, when Andor walks in. She says, "I dreamed you came back. You came over a wall." And it's maybe she had the dream, maybe, But in my head, it's like she can't distinguish reality from her dreams at this point, and that's exactly what Andor did, right? He came over the wall when he first saw her, several episodes ago, and for me, she was recalling that moment, but to her, she doesn't know which day it is or which way is up and down. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
pretty sad. Willimon's had enough. This is where he chucks the pipe bomb. Really great sound here. Yeah, explosions are always fun, right? Seismic charges and all that. But I thought they did a really good job with the sound because, man, you could feel the blast. I had this thing cranked on my home system here, and it was pretty powerful, no pun intended. But that blast going off, busting Nurchi's face, which was good. I was like, yeah, punk, take that. That stormtrooper got blown the
yeah.
hell up. He kept flying across the screen.
Well, I like that it wasn't just it wasn't his
Yeah.
bomb that did all the damage, because that would have just been kind of over the top. That
Sure.
a homemade bomb could do something that considerable, but at least chucked. But that it created a chain reaction of explosions that really did some damage, and created this fog, and created it was almost like Geonosis, of some sorts from Attack of the Clones.
Mm-hmm.
It was just really cool though. And again, like the way that they blew the windows out everywhere, and yeah, Andor and Bix were kind of lucky. They were, just beneath the window, and they hadn't started leaving, sooner than that. Otherwise they would have been taken out too.
Yeah. Yeah. A precise hit, and only a precise hit, will start a chain reaction of bombs, of grenades. Yeah, it was all those grenades going off that you're right, that caused that whole thing. Cyril, at this point, he rushes in to go save his girl. More on that in a little bit. Vel runs in, but I don't know what she's running. Is she going after Cinta? Is that what she's like? They showed her running into
so.
the smoke, but they didn't really follow it up.
Yeah, I think she's going after Cinta, is my guess.
Okay, that would be the most logical thing. Blasso had a moment in there where he headbutted the stormtrooper with the helmet on.
Yeah, man, he's a boss, I guess. That's one hard head.
It's the dude, like you talked about. He's the tank of this group, right? So
yeah,
every group needs one. He's the one.
Yeah, maybe he had a
lot of
buff on
people
him.
on Ferrix died. A lot of citizens, which I thought was good, right? We didn't want everybody. I mean, we talked about how nobody died, but none of the heroes really died.
Right.
But these poor
Only a
citizens,
few
they
named
certainly gave their
characters.
life for Ferrix and the cause.
Absolutely. I mean, in the Empire, they started just opening fire, right? They, like you were saying before, the Imperials they start
It's the fear.
losing. Yeah, they lose control. So the first thing they do is they just, okay, well, to exert control, we'll just take everybody out. I think this is the question that comes after later, and I think you're maybe waxing a little bit this earlier, is like, what happens to Ferrix later on? Because we see all this violence here, and then we see the aftermath is quiet, but people are kind of walking around. Not many people, but a few people. So what exactly is the lasting effects of this, both Imperial and Ferrix, local citizens, in the longer term? And whether or not we even come back to Ferrix, and do we have a reason to come back to Ferrix anymore?
Well, I'll save my thoughts. Again, not to tease the Patreon, but I will save my thought. I have some theories as to what's going to happen to Ferrix, and what I would do if I was the Empire. But we'll do that another time. Thank God somebody saves B2. The entire time I'm like, where is he at? Because we talked about whether he would die, and I did not want him to die, or whatever. What's the term? Be decommissioned. I don't know
Okay.
what you would call it, the rope. I'm sorry, that's
Right.
an IT term. We saw where Zan dies. Sad, yes. However, this is where we get the time grappler doing his "This is Sparta" or "This is Ferrix" moment at this point. And then poor Deidre. I mean, she's. Did you see it was a brick that she took to the head?
Oh, was it? I couldn't tell what it was that threw at her head.
Yeah, you can barely see what looks to be a brick at the very top of the screen if you play it in slow motion. But if you turn on the audio description, it says that a brick is thrown at her, and that's what causes her to fall over. And of course, she drops her blaster. She starts getting trampled. And then who's the man that saves her? Her boy, her white knight in shining armor, comes rolling in and rescues her, throws her into the, storage closet of some sort. And we get our moment.
That's convenient.
So this is the moment you hated. Is
7
that right?
minutes in heaven, I guess. I thought they were going to, if they started making
wasn't
out, I
even
was going to
7.
turn it. I was going to turn it off if they
would have kissed.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I'm going to give you your moment to shine here. You just go ahead and talk about the scene to fulfill all your happiness real quick, and then I will tear it all apart.
Well, at this time, I'm going to reenact the scene with myself. Here we go. No, I'm kidding. I won't do that. Uh, but but yeah, I mean, so he goes in. I mean, it's clearly he's in love with her, right, or wants to protect her. I think it's love. People may argue that he's just infatuated or wants to protect her for other reasons. I don't know.
I think technically it's infatuation at this point because I don't know if that can be love, but yes.
Yeah, no, there's something called love at first sight or third sight or
No,
creepy sight.
there's not.
There is.
It's in okay.
So here's the only thing I'll say. Like the fact that she said, she smiled or he smiles and she says, I should say thank you. And he says, you don't have to. And then the way they're looking at each other, them dudes they're shipped 100%.
This was their I love you, I know moment.
Yeah.
But in an imperial way.
Yep.
Gross.
He's now put his finger in his mouth to make a gag symbol or gesture.
I don't do that. Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
I know
Gary,
you don't do the shipping thing.
Gary Smith, ISB and ISB supervisor kiss, boring. I don't even know if she knows how to kiss. To be honest with you,
oh, she does. Come on.
Wow, this is not going to be a kiss analysis here, but
yeah.
It was
I'm excited
you,
about this. I know you're probably not.
Right? I mean, Imperials need love too, I suppose. But I mean, I think the part I have a problem with is it so extremely cliche. Like the white knight coming in and saving the girl. And not that, and Deidre Monroe just being a super like strong and powerful character, need to be saved. And again, the emotions are very raw. I expect her to come back down to reality here pretty soon and to return back to that kind of baseline that she has. And so that was the part that just kind of rubbed me. So I checked all of those kind of negative reactions to it, that this is an extremely stressful situation for her. And again, the first time she's ever been probably in this kind of threatening situation where, and the reason why it was really important, I think, to see her clawing at the ground, trying to gain purchase on the ground, to find some way, to get to her blaster, to get away or to do something, right? And just that truly terrified look on her face, like she does not know what to do, and utter chaos all around you, and you don't know if you're taking one of your last few breaths. And so it was I can understand all of those emotions kind of getting chalked up to that, but to all of a sudden look at Cyril Karn of all people, loser of the galaxy, ugh. Just ugh.
Well, it's the white knight syndrome in reverse. We talked about Cyril experiencing that with her and the way he was kind of looking at her, and that now it's been reversed. And so, in their eyes, they're equal. They both saved each other. I think it's going to have an impact. Yeah, you can call it cliche. There's plenty of clichéness in Star Wars, but I'm for it. I don't know where this goes though. And we'll talk more on the Patreon episode about where this goes. Like, this is a weird kind of relationship. And part of me feels that Corv had to pass in order for, him, for Cyril to kind of come into the picture. And I'm sure that's not how the Empire works, right? I don't think you just pull anybody out and say, oh, this person who, I guess he does have past experience. It's not like he was just an accountant his entire life and decided to suddenly, he was enlisted or to become an Imperial agent of some sort.
Tailor in a former life, apparently.
Yeah. Was that what it was?
I don't know. He likes to tailor and manicure his uniform. And everything else,
that's right. That's right. Yeah. So he's got some experience there. So, but here's the problem. Here's the problem that I have with the character, and it's not a bad problem. It's actually a good problem. Like, he's not an anti-hero. He's not even a bad guy. Like, he's like, we're rooting, like, you feel bad rooting for him because you want him to be the bad guy, but he's really not. Like, what has he done? I mean, aside from, well, he's done nothing but eat cereal and work a lame ass job. However, he's only just doing the right thing. I mean, he's a very lawful person, and yet he's trying to get mixed up with the Empire, which we know is, okay, they're probably lawful, right? If we're going to bring, alignments into this again, but they're evil, right? They're not good people. So I don't know where this is going to go. Like, what does this relationship look like? I think they've established they have a relationship now, or it's the beginning of one. And if we're going to have a year jump, then I think that's plenty of time for us to come back, and that's now established in some way, whether it's working, platonic. I hope it's romantic in some way, but how does that work? Like, I just have a lot of questions about how they're going to be able to make this work, honestly. And I'm very concerned for them.
I'm very concerned for the future of our podcast if they turn out to be a thing.
David Rogers says, my wife thinks he's a creep and Dedra doesn't know how to deal with him. That's probably true. But, you know,
that was at least true a couple of episodes ago. So
yeah.
We'll see what that actually translates to now, like you were saying.
Come on, we've all hooked up with creepy people in the past, right? It's just...
I swear, though, happens. if we get a scene like a Revenge of the Sith where she's laying down and then he rises up without a shirt on and his head's in his hand because he's had a bad dream. Yeah. I'm gonna have some words.
Okay, you can call Gilroy directly. We spent way more time than I thought we were going to on that scene. I'm a happy camper though. So Luthen is watching all of this happen.
Yeah, he is just kind of on the rear of it all. Kind of, I don't know. I was curious what I want to know what's going through his head like the entire time. I mean, he's watching all of this stuff, and I mean, he did get kind of knocked back and knocked over. But he's just kind of watching the chaos and just, all right, peace. I guess I'm out.
Yeah, and he leaves. I don't know. I won't bring this up again, but I do feel like he is kind of a coward in that regard. Like, he didn't do anything. I mean, he was there, picked up.
Well, and he's on the outskirts of the city. He's on the outskirts of the city, listening to the laser fire and everything. Like this mini war that's broken out, you know, here in this town. And is he satisfied that this type of thing happens? Is this just he's just resolute and he's you know, this is just the way things are and the way that he knows that things will need to be and will continue to be because this is just the situation that everyone's in, or, you know, and that's his job isn't to be directly involved in any of it. And like you said, he, you know, self-proclaimed coward. He's the puppet master. He's not the one in there getting his hands dirty, you know, very often at least.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I got a lot of questions of Luthen now, probably more than I had before this episode started. You know, they're kind of wrapping things up, right? This war has died down. Or I guess the skirmish has died down at this point. Cinta and Vel are heading out. Still awkward. We talked about that. And then Jezzy, B2, Wilman, Brasso, and Bix all are thrown into the ship. Andor tells them to fly to Ganji Moon and to climb. And again, I'm sure someone, if they've not done it already, has now made yet another meme with all of the climb references, which I think are cool and it's poignant. I get it, but there's a theme, right? Thematically, this continues to play into that. He says, I'm counting on you. You can always say that. Or B2 says you always say that, and he says you always come through. So I thought that was a really good moment for them because, I mean, B2. He had some really great moments at last episode. I think he had a couple in this one. But every time he talks, he just sounds so like sad and pathetic. But it does. I feel like Andor gave him enough hope that he would be back, and I hold him at his word. I mean, he says, "I will find you," you know. And Bix repeats it too. She says, "Cassian will find us. You know, he will come back for us." And so, I mean, they're definitely signaling that he will be back with them. I think you have a good question that we'll probably dissect a little bit further. Does that happen, you know, at the beginning of season 2, or is Andor more of the person that's going to check in with them, you know, 30 days after all this happens, and then 30 days after all of that, you know, every time he can, or is he put him in hiding this entire time, and when he does resurface, it's the first time they've seen him in a year, and he's, you know, a completely different person. I think all that's obviously to be determined.
Right. Yeah. I always feel so bad for B2. He always sounds so pathetic.
He does. We talked about Moss drinking. Kudos to that guy. He's doing it right. Luthen, when he comes into the Fondor Holcraft, the droid, his Fondor droid doesn't respond.
Right.
What did you make of that? Like, did you, like, at first I thought, well, maybe Cassian like disabled it or somehow did that, or did he have a conversation with this droid and said, "I'm here because I want to join Luthen," and so that's why the droid didn't say anything, to give them the opportunity to have that conversation?
I don't know, because I mean, how would he have been able to get onto the ship in the first place?
Yeah. I mean, you would think that ship is locked down, like, pretty darn tight.
Right. Yeah. And so that's really confusing as well. But I'm assuming that he found a way to hack his way on the board on ship.
Right.
And
because that's what Andor would do. Yeah.
Yeah, and to bypass whatever the system was that was going to, because yeah, it didn't respond to him because he wanted to do an immediate evac. No response. Of course, that got his attention. So I think it's pretty clear that Andor did something to delay all of those effects. But the system was still online, but that it didn't respond at all, I thought was really curious.
Hmm. Um, that'd be cool or cute or whatever if in season 2 at some point, they have a moment where he says like, "So, how did you get on my ship?" You know,
Yeah.
because that's got to be like throwing Luthen off that he was able to get past all the security features. Um, so yeah, Cassian says, "You came here to kill me, didn't you?" He says, "You don't make it easy." And he says, "I will now." Picks up the blaster, and Luthen's, really questioning what the heck is going on here. Like, what does this guy want? He says, "What game is this?" He says, "No game. Kill me, or take me in." We get Luthen's smile. Cassian's eyes start to swell up, and it kind of cuts at that point. Which again, I thought was for me, this was the best moment. Right, hearing him say, "Kill me or take me in." This was,
Right.
he's committed. He's committing to the cause now in a way
Yeah,
that
it's
he had
that
never had before.
yeah, it's that vow, right? I mean,
Yeah,
there's
right.
one way you can interpret a vow, and it was I mean, it doesn't do it because again, if we were saying at the beginning of the show, if if he survive if he's not taken in and he isn't killed by Luthen, he's just going to be going in this vicious cycle of always running from the Empire or getting snagged in some stupid Imperial, event and shuttled off to some planet to start making stuff. And it's just not it's not a life worth living. And he has seen enough of it now, and he's listened to enough of the other folks. And you could say, well, maybe his entire breadth of knowledge isn't that well thought out, or it's not that expanded, but I think he's seen a lot. He's experienced enough of it. He experiences what the reality of it is now, to where he understands that this isn't one place that this is happening. This is happening everywhere. And the conditions of how he was ensnared into it in the first place, and how he's just kind of fallen into a lot of this stuff, is just going to get worse and worse and worse if they don't do something about it. And with Marva willing to give everything for it, even at the end of her days, and saying that she would have started over and done it again, knowing that that's what she would have wanted. He knows, but this is what Clem would have wanted as well. He gave his life, and really taken from his family, from the Empire's perspective. And,
Yeah.
so they basically took Bix from him, and made Bix into this, shell of a person of what she was. And granted, again, some of that's, could be laid at the feet of Andor indirectly, of course, as well. But still, it's just, these aren't going away. And it's really important for Andor to, this is what this season was all about. The season was about, how did it get to that moment? How did it get to this moment right here? And from here on out, there's no doubts about his commitment. He's in, because otherwise he would have just taken the easy way out, and he would have been done with it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Tony Gilroy has said in some articles, not just the Vulture one we've referenced, but I think we've seen this in other places too. Is that one and two, this question about, is he committed to the rebellion? That is not a question anymore.
Exactly.
The next phase is everything about, what it makes actually work and find a way to work together, because that's the next challenge, right? Just
Mhm.
getting the people in place is one thing, being committed, but when you got all these people who are committed, then what? So this won't be a question. I think they did a really fantastic job of this being just that final moment that says specifically, yes, I'm in. And then Luthen says, yes, I'll take you in. And they both kind of have the moment. But I think it's really telling, though, that it's still a difficult moment for Cassian. There's a lot of a lot of emotions running through him too, right? Of losing his mother and seeing what he has seen, what he's experienced, and everything that's going on around him. It's a lot to take to this moment. But it's really rewarding, I think, from a viewer's side, to see that journey and actually have it pay off, and it feel meaningful at the end of the day.
I would agree. Like just to kind of wrap up. I mean, overall the series was amazing, and we'll come back and do kind of a series recap, and then with a look ahead to some of the I guess some of the questions that we still have, some of the things that went unresolved, some of the new things that we've kind of touched on here that may or may not play into season 2. But I think you're right. I mean, this was a very definitive way to end the season. There's obviously things that we there's still questions out there, but at the same time, we have a clear understanding of where our character is, right? We didn't get this gimmicky. I was talking to my brother, he's in the chat tonight, and he was pretty happy saying that he was getting kind of tired of this gimmicky, oh, we're going to leave you with a big cliffhanger and that sort of thing. It probably has run its course. So this was kind of a return to more traditional storytelling, I think, if I could say that, with regards to, wrapping up the things that need to be wrapped up, not leaving a lot of loose threads out there that were significant threads, right? No mystery box kind of thing. But there are some other intriguing things that are maybe trivial, or everything from, like we said, Deidre and Cyril's relationship to, what we talked about at the very beginning. Like, we never came back to Andor's sister, and that question is still
Right.
out there. And maybe it was Marva saying, what she said, don't stop, stop looking for your sister. You're never going to find her. Maybe that was really the end of it, but they've just done so
No,
much. They did enough for me, at least, to feel like that is something that's still unresolved. And I do want to see more of that picked up in season 2. But again,
Gilroy
more
won't answer
speculation.
Tony Gilroy won't answer the question about the
Oh,
sister
yeah, I
either.
saw
So
that.
that
He said
that
no
tells you
comment.
everything you need to tells you everything you need to know. That's a
Yeah.
really great point, though, and an observation that there was no true cliffhanger like that we would normally see at the end of a season. It was very, I don't know, very tidy in
Mhm.
some ways. Yeah, there's a lot of open story or a lot of
Sure.
open story because we know we've got 4 more years to go before the events of Rogue One.
Right.
And so that's natural with it, but everything does feel resolved for this arc. So if you look at season one, it was one arc, it feels complete, it feels content here. If the series were to end right here, it would feel like there are a lot of things you'd like to know. But I think as far as Cassian Andor is concerned, you'd feel like, okay, I got the origin of Cassian Andor,
Yep.
and I feel like I know the character a lot better about how he came to this point, and then I can fill in all the mental gaps about what all the misadventures and things that he got himself into
Right.
that led up to Rogue One we saw there. And it would be very satisfying, I think, if this was just a one season series. I would be very satisfied with what we have. That we have a whole nother season that's going to span multiple years is really exciting. About now you have a really an open door of what you can do, knowing that you've still got a certain endpoint you've got to get to. And the way that Tony Gilroy approaches this is really interesting too, of saying, I know where I have to get to. I don't have to think beyond that or to think about the existential reach of this series across all of Star Wars and things like that, because my characters don't do that. So as we get into more speculation about what's to come, those would be kind of fun to pull some of Tony Gilroy's words moving forward. But I like that we have a very self-contained season that you could really say, this was really good stuff. I'm really happy with what we got. And if it were to end today, I feel answers to the character I quite honestly I didn't know I wanted in the first place. Because I'll be the first to admit when they announced Andor, I wasn't super thrilled about it. It was a good character in Rogue One, but I was like, okay, well, what is there? And then we got this. I'm like, well, holy crap. All right. Well, I have no idea what I'm talking about. So thanks for that affirmation.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll leave it there. I mean, we've already gone 2 hours, and again, we've got a lot still to talk about. A lot of
We haven't,
questions.
we haven't even talked about the first post credit scene.
Well, we talked it about at the beginning, but yeah, I mean, it was cool to see them building this Death Star thing. And does it really? I mean, I don't know. I think when we first talked about what are they building in that first episode in season or episode, was it 5? I think, or 4, episode 4. Um, when we talked about it then, we had said it was probably something that had to do with the Death Star, because that is,
Right.
we know that from like the Ahsoka novels and from a lot of other pieces of material, a lot of other material that was in and around the subject. It is a huge amount of effort to build that Death Star. People don't understand and can't grasp the size and the amount of time and effort and material and labor, material and labor that goes into building that. On top of, star destroyers and imperial garrisons, and I mean, this is a massive, massive galactic empire, and these resources are coming from somewhere. So I think we speculated it was probably that, but then, it could have been anything at that point. Everything from nothing to, that theory of they're building it and the other teams are tearing it down and it's just busy work. I'm pretty happy though. I like the fact that we got this, because I mean, they did it in a post credit scene. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't, undermine the work itself or overplay the work in any way. It's just stuff that has to be done.
Well, it was such a great tie-in though to to the very beginning of Rogue One too, where we see the final assembly of the dish going into the Death Star.
Yeah, good point.
So it's such a great connection to that to see. Yeah, the sphere seems like it's pretty close to being done, but everything with the Kyber and the with the disc and the laser itself is still very much, in progress. And so I thought that was a really great connected tissue though to it, and also give you an idea of how long it's going to take to still get the rest of this done, how much work still has to be, done in order to churn these things out, especially now that they've lost a big chunk of their labor market.
That's true. There's plenty of other facilities out there somewhere that they can stand up. I think the more tragic and ironic thing is that he is contributing to the one thing that ultimately, ends his life, right? I mean, he's building the Death Star and not knowing that he's doing so. And then he has that moment of Rogue One where the same weapon, he has no idea. That's the sad thing, right? He has no idea that weapon is what took him out. I mean, he knows that it's a weapon, but that he was contributing to that. So there's some tragedy, some ironic tragedy in that, which I thought was pretty poetic and very bad way.
Way to end the show on a downer, Albert. Thanks.
That's what I do. All about downers.
He excels at that.
And we didn't even talk about K2SO. We'll talk about K2SO in the next episode as well. So
K2.
Okay. Yeah, it's what they take B2's core and they move it into one of the KX droids, and that's what I'm kidding. That's not what happens. It's a theory.
Now I'm even more like sad for B2.
Wouldn't that be horrible, right?
Ugh.
He doesn't have his own personality. They just reimplant it into, it's like the Falcon and L337. But we'll end it here. Quick programming note. We're actually going to take a week off. Like, I don't know. We haven't had any time off all year, to be honest, that I remember. But we got the holidays going on, so we will return with another episode. So I don't even know what day this is. I think this is on Thanksgiving.
Today's Wednesday the 23rd, so I think we'll probably come back Thursday the 1st.
Thursday the 1st?
Yeah.
Okay.
So kind of on a normal schedule. So next Thursday we'll come back with a fresh new episode. We'll see what exactly we'll have on the menu there. But just be on the lookout. cantinacast.com/YouTube. Or, of course, you can, we'll post it on our events page over on cantinacast.com as soon as we get all that scheduled and ready to roll.
You know what I'm ready to talk about?
What's that?
High Republic.
It's been a while.
It's been a while. I'm pretty excited about it. Let's talk about that. I don't know. We'll get caught up here soon, but we've got that coming up. And then, of course, we'll come back and do the series recap and a lot of speculation into season 2 with Andor once we return as well.
You know what I'm excited about, Albert?
What's that?
All the fantastic people that showed up for the live stream tonight. And we actually just had Neil Sega pop in, an old friend of the show here. So good to see Neil. Also that came in and gave us a piped in Alex, Jonathan, Sky, Rob, Steph, Lauren, Katya, obviously Subdued, Music Train, Duff Dog, the instructor, Gary Smith, Dave. Thank you, everyone. You're listening to the stream. We do this for both the Patreon shows and for the general release shows, so all are open for the public. cantinacast.com/YouTube. You can go and subscribe to the channel and be notified anytime we go live.
Cool. Well, with that,
there you go. David Rogers. Yeah, David Rogers going on a high note. Yeah, Uncle Harlow is a loose end. That's right.
Yeah, we got to get to the bottom of Uncle Harlow. Maybe it'll be a novel somewhere at some point. They'll probably tap my shoulder to write the Uncle Harlow novel. And you're going to get exactly what you deserve if you got me writing a Star Wars book on Uncle Harlow.
I don't even want to guess it. So, and before we go, again, go check out cantinacast.com/Jeditorials. Check out Lauren and Dante's pieces out there. You will thank yourself when you do. Give them a like and leave them a comment there and tell them how much you enjoyed it.
Okay, well, we'll see you guys in about a week. And happy Thanksgiving to anybody who celebrates, and happy holidays as well.
You're still listening? Wow, that's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property, and all that other good, fun stuff. But I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what. So that's your disclaimer.